Good. Well, I was going to say good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Ed Trust in Louisiana's The Other Voice podcast, where we talk all things education, culture, and everything. I'm excited to be back for season 2, episode 2, with my chief. We have a phenomenal superstar in the studio with us today. Good afternoon. Jaleesa.
Boy.
But all things. But we're excited to have a superstar guest with us today. We're excited to talk all things education, some really interesting hot topics here in Baton Rouge and education in general. So yeah, with that being said, Jaleesa, it's your that's 5. So let's get us right into the conversation that everybody's talking about, the things that are coming, and just kind of like tune us into how what that's looking like. What does it look like?
Well, my Fast Five today is I'm going to talk about TD, Latoya Cantrell in New Orleans, and the federal indictment that came down on her. I have so many thoughts. I have so many thoughts because I really believe. Let me say this: guilty, innocent, doesn't matter to me. Protect Black women. There are so many things that happen, and we are so quick to attack. We are so quick to jump on. And as a people, we have to look at: are we on the right side of this? Are we saying the right things? Are we supporting each other the way our counterparts support each other? Because I just think about the criminal in the White House, and his peers are supporting him no matter what. They are cheering him on, right? We don't want to get the idea that we cheer people on and they're wrong, or in their in things that they do that aren't right. But we also should give people time to clear their name. We should give people time to, we can't be looking for things wrong within ourselves. And as Black women, it's so hard to lead because most of the time we don't have an example before us. We don't have people. We have to figure it out. As Black leaders, we have to figure so many things out. So while there are oftentimes, she has different things to pull from. There are different people that she could follow their example. It's just the fact that people were so quick to attack her and so quick to point the finger and say, I knew something was wrong with her. I knew she wasn't right. I'm glad they got her. I'm glad they caught her. Are we giving grace? Are we, Sarah Jakes Roberts does this thing on her podcast called Rescue Eve, where she talks about different women who have been in the media, in the news, where they may have been, nailed to the cross, and they're able to, like, are we going to rescue them? Are we giving them grace? And it kind of shifts your perspective to say, no one is perfect. No one walking this earth is perfect except, Jesus Christ himself when he did. But everyone should be extended grace. And I just have an issue with people being quick to say, I knew something was wrong with her, because why were you looking for fault in her? Why were you, looking for her to fail? Why do we have to have this idea or this notion that Black leaders need to either be flawless or they're wrong? That it's one of the two. It's no middle ground. It's no grace. So that's just my thought. Think about Rescue Eve. If anyone has ever watched the Sarah Jakes Roberts podcast, think about that and how we look at women in our community, and men too. How we look at our own community and see if we're giving grace, or if we are just, really making our leaders say, I either have to show up perfect or I'm going to be nailed to the cross.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great, first of all, you know how I feel about TV, and I've been very clear publicly of where I am with this particular issue. But it's one of the things that I've continuously talked about, just in general, about the grace of Black leaders, and we've experienced it in here together. I think about my time on the school board, and people love you till they don't. So it's always one of those things of never get too high, never get too low. But I do believe that we should lead with grace, especially for our leaders. I mean, leadership is hard and it's lonely.
Yes.
And so I truly believe that we need to give grace, especially in education. And as we think about, as we have this conversation today, there's so much grace that needs to be extended. So I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yes, yeah.
That Fast 5.
Your turn.
So for my Fast Five, we had a spotlight series in for interest called Leaders in Louisiana. And it was a 7-part series where we really talked about or highlighted some of the successful leaders here and just about what they meant for the communities and the things that they do. So my Fast Five, there was a post put out the other day about one of our basketball coaches, and we also featured him on our Leaders in Louisiana series. And so I'm going to read the statement and then play our feature of him. And just today, I'm giving my flowers to former basketball coach at Liberty High School, Brandon White. So the post read, after 9 incredible years at Liberty High, I'm stepping down as the head boys basketball coach. It's been an honor to help build this program into a state powerhouse while building boys into men and helping several players reach the collegiate level. Thank you to the players, coaches, parents, and community for their unwavering support. I'm proud of what we built together. With gratitude, Coach Brandon White. So there's been a lot of conversations in the community about what this means, where this came from, but that's not important to me. What's important to me is what we've been able to watch be built at Liberty High School with that boys basketball team and the things and the power that they've created amongst a group of young Black men in the city. And it's something to be celebrated in my eyes. And so we have a clipping of our series that really highlights and kind of tells the story of Liberty basketball. And yeah, my Fast Five is just giving flowers, honors to Coach Brandon White as he goes on to his next ventures in life. And so if we have that, cool. If not, we'll run it back later.
My name is Brandon White. I'm a boys basketball coach and athletic director at Liberty High School. In high school, I played at Glen Oaks High School, 2005 state championship team where we went 36-0. I originally began my career as a walk-on at Southern University before earning a scholarship. I was a graduate assistant at Southern University from 2011 to 2013 where I began my coaching career. I started my coaching career at Park Forest Middle School. My first year as a head coach was in 2014 at Parkview Baptist. Then I took the job at Liberty High School as the athletic director and head boys basketball coach. The 2023-24 Liberty High School boys basketball team, we was able to accomplish our first state championship in school history. So I'm the type of coach, I'm the type of person, if you tell me what you want, you know, I try to hold you to that standard and push you to accomplish that. I pride myself on trying to help these guys get to college. That's the biggest thing. In the last 8 years, we've had 16 young men from our program go on to play college basketball. This past year, out of the 6 seniors, 5 of the 6 seniors signed scholarships. In the 23 class, we had 1 guy signed, but in the 22 class, all 5 of our seniors signed. We use basketball to prepare them for life. I always tell the guys it's ups and downs, it's a roller coaster. You never could get too high on yourself or get too low. What we try to do with the game of basketball is teach these guys that even though you go through adversity, you know, basketball-wise, maybe you missing shots or maybe you turning the ball over, you know, or maybe you just not having your best day. You know, you still have to find a way to get over whatever it is that you're going through. It's your teammates. They're depending on you to be, you know, come through and push through. But in life, you know, it could possibly be your family that's depending on you to provide for them in the midst of adversity.
All right, so that's my Fast Five. That was a great series. We were able to go to you see in the video clippings where they got these 6 a.m. practices and just really just the influence on the kids in the community. You know, that we're here. So my kudos and flowers to Coach Brandon White as he moves up to his next interest.
Thank you, Dr. Brandon White, for your contribution to our community, the boys in our community, the students at Liberty. We appreciate you.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, we have a celebrity in the house, okay?
The celebrity superintendent.
The celebrity superintendent.
That's what y'all said.
As people in the community have also the
yes.
Celebrity superintendent. And so we are going to jump straight into a conversation with none other than Lamont Cole, the superintendent of the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. And so, yeah, we are excited to welcome Lamont to the stage, to the couch, the hot seat as you would, to ask him some questions and really just get into a conversation about his leadership journey here in Baton Rouge and his role as superintendent. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to probably none. But welcome on my coach to the platform.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome, Michael. So, Mr. Cole, we
Sure.
are so excited to have you with us today. We are so excited to sit down and have a conversation with you. This time last year, we were sitting down with you, and I think you were like 30 days on the job. You were somewhere like that. You were brand spanking new. You had just taken the job. Now we're coming back a year later. You've had time to see Baton Rouge in a different light, because again, this is a new role for you. So you got to see what it's like to lead 40,000 students and 5,000 employees. How has that been for you? Well, how would you describe in one word this year?
Exciting.
Exciting. I like that.
The good, bad, up, down. It has all been extremely exciting.
Awesome.
But thank you for the opportunity to be here. You guys are doing some fantastic work, keeping the community informed on all things. Yeah.
Yes. So when you, we know you're from here. We know your story. You grew up right here in Baton Rouge. How has it been leading the second largest school system in the state in a city that you're from?
For me, it's been extremely refreshing to see so many different perspectives from people who grew up here, because people feel free telling me all of their thoughts about education, and then they feel even more free telling me how I should do the job. But it's been interesting because I think more people than not are extremely passionate about public ed, right? They want to see the best things happen for our students, and are frustrated that the best things have not happened. I mean, Baton Rouge, public education in Baton Rouge has a rich history in turmoil, if we say it that way. When we go all the way back to desegregation, and we start thinking about the various different judges who made singular decisions that impacted the entire community, and then how those decisions spent off into other decisions that impacted our school system. I think it's important to know from whence we came in order to understand where we are, and then to think about how we make decisions going forward. The national scene shouldn't be lost on what's happening locally, right? Politics, all politics are local. And when we start thinking about what is happening nationally around the country in terms of education, public education, it's going to have an impact on what's happening here. So you got to try to operate in those spaces while trying to do what's best for students. And then when you operate a district like ours, which is over 80% African American, and then you think about over 20% Latino, you have to think about how do you ensure the right types of systems are in place to provide an education for Black and brown kids. And when we think about that, it's very, very, very complex, right? Because you got to do that while setting up a system that is attractive for all children, no matter where they come from, and for all families, no matter what their socioeconomic income status is. How do you create a system that's attractive for everyone? And so when having those conversations with folks who have students in our school system, as well as with folks who do not have children in our school system, are impacted, because the school system is the largest producer of those who work in our businesses, right? We educate the largest amount of workers in this community by far, right? The majority of the people who work in every business in this community are educated in the Spanish Parish school system. So what type of citizens are we producing, and what type of work ethic are they bringing to the table? And have we prepared them for work? Have we prepared them for career? And I think that's a vital question. So just walking around, listening, traveling, visiting schools, and then listening to folks who have served in the role of superintendent, there's no right way to do this, right? Everybody does it differently.
That's right.
My approach is to be in schools every single day. Some will say to me, well, the superintendent shouldn't be in schools every single day. And I say to people, well, that's the only way I know what's happening.
That's right.
Listening to teachers, listening to school leaders, listening to kids. That's really important to understand what they're experiencing. So my approach has been to try to create a school system students, A, feel safe attending, and then B, excited, and then C, feel like they're earning or receiving a quality education as a result. So when they get ready to transition from their post K-12 experience, they're confident enough to do whatever they want. So I'm not one who says everyone should go to college, everyone should go to career, everyone should go to military. I'm one who says you need to be prepared to do whatever you want, whatever that looks like. And you got to decide that. And our job should be to help you identify what your goals, dreams, and aspirations are, and then prepare you to pursue those in a way that's confident for you. Some will say we ought to be preparing everybody to go to college. Well, I know a whole lot of people who didn't go to college and are extremely successful. Some will say, well, we ought to be preparing them for a career. Well, some people need to go to college first before they go into a career. I think kids need to be taught to identify who they are, find themselves first, and then prepare to pursue whatever it is they want. And we ought to make sure we support them in a way to do that. So a lot of what I hear and see in schools in terms of the way some of our school leaders think about their approach to education is, in my opinion, flawed, right? You know, we put way too many emphasis on rules. I'm not saying we shouldn't have processes, we shouldn't have procedures, but some of these rules hold our children back. So we got to think about, do we have rules for the sake of having rules? Or are these rules really designed to help children be successful? And when we start thinking about that, really thinking about whether or not the right color shirt, you know, having the shirt tucked in, the right color belt, the right color shoes, if those things really have an impact on overall student performance, overall student outcome, and we step back and take a look at that, and we think about perhaps the most intelligent generation we've known in this country, probably the classes of 1969, 70, 71, and 72, they didn't wear uniforms, right? They didn't go into environments where they were so rigid and so strict. They were in environments where they were free to explore themselves, free to explore who they are, and free to understand what was happening in the world around them so that they could make informed decisions. And so for me, it's about making a shift into that way of thinking. That's hard, though. That's really hard.
Because when you're sitting here talking, it's like Tramelle and I have often said this about keeping students at the center and being able to really amplify student voice. Tramelle does amazing work around student voice, and it's a lot of the things that are happening in schools, you do have to think about, is this adult focused? Is this something adults have in place to, you know, create order in their eyes? But are our schools reflecting prisons?
Yeah.
I've been to some schools where I've, you know, do work, and I'm like, why are the kids walking around like they are in prison? Silent lunches. You know, it's some things that are just, they need to be social, and especially if they don't have PE once they get to those older grades. Why is everything silent?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, and we had this conversation last week where folks were talking about, you know, whose voice is most important. But I kind of want to shift my question to piggyback off of Jaleesa. When you think about growing up in this town and also being a superintendent in this town, I always tell people, if I ever was to be a superintendent, I never would want to be where I'm from. Right. And so my question to you is,
Why you didn't tell me that before?
my question would be, how do you, knowing your history in this town, how do you make those tough decisions, and what are some of those decisions that you have to make already that people are like, dang, well, you our boy, like, how are you doing? It's like, how do you make tough decisions as the person that's, you know, that's like the hometown hero?
Well, I do exactly as you said. I was telling somebody the other day, I was talking to a young man who is a brand new field of education, and he said to me, I want to be where you are. I want to do exactly what you did. And I said to him, the work comes first. The work comes first. And so it's been a little bit easier for me probably than someone else because I grew up here, and I've always tried to take care of other people's children. And when you have a reputation for taking care of other people's children, you earn some trust. So people will believe the decisions you're making are going to be in the best interest of children because they know that's what you've always tried to do. As a teacher, as a school leader, I always tried to make decisions I thought were in the best interest of children. Some of the more challenging decisions, I think the big one was closing schools, right? That was a decision some people had some challenges with. I'll give you an example. I walked into a school and it was mold and mildew in the ceiling. The HVAC system was leaking. The windows were old and the paint was chipping and peeling. In my mind, it probably was some asbestos in the walls, and we were expecting kids to be educated in that type of facility. And for me, I thought to myself, how dare we put kids in this environment? But when I made an attempt to close the school, I had people saying, why are you closing our school? And the first question I had, when the last time you've been in your school? Was it 40 years ago when you were educated there? take a walk in there. Now, that's no fault of anybody's but the people who are responsible for maintaining our facilities. So one of the first things I did was hire a gentleman and had a very candid conversation with him about the way I wanted our facilities to look, how I wanted them to be maintained, and the attention I needed to be given to our facilities. Then I had a conversation with our partner, HES, right? And I said to them, I'm not satisfied with what I'm seeing, and we can do better. And so, I'm happy to say they've made a tremendous turnaround in terms of how we are providing support for our facilities in terms of upkeep, maintenance, grass, painting, our playgrounds, our courts. We've done a tremendous job this year in addressing all of those things. But those things were extremely controversial in terms of closing schools, consolidating some schools, changing start times. All of those things were really controversial. I went and spoke at a community meeting in Glen Oaks, and I just simply explained to them. I said, "Listen, I know some of you are frustrated with the change I made in the start time. I said, but here's the reality of the situation. Glen Oaks High School has some of the highest truancy rates in the state, the highest absentee rate in the state, some of the lowest graduation rates in the district. And so when we look at those three things, truancy, absenteeism, and graduation rates, and we've been doing the exact same things forever, and then we have a ton of research from over 30 health organizations that say school start times for adolescent students shouldn't be before 8:30.
Right.
And here we are in Baton Rouge with the earliest start times in the country. Then what are we doing to ourselves? And how are we setting ourselves up for success when we see this is not working? I'm happy to report the teachers there initially didn't like the change because they were making it about them. Last week, I got a text message from like 6 teachers saying this was the best thing that ever
For
happened.
those who don't know, Brother Coach,
Yeah.
tell us about what is the exact change that was made with the signs.
Sure. So at 2 of our high schools, we changed the start time from 7:10 to 8:50. So the kids were going to school from 7:10 to 2:25. We changed the time from 8:50 to 4:05 at 2 of our high schools. The 2 high schools that had the highest truancy rate, the highest absenteeism, and then the lowest graduation rate. We started with those 2 schools. The teachers are reporting that kids are showing up more alert. They're staying awake in class. They're eating breakfast when they show up at school. Because we recognize when kids weren't showing up at school on time, they weren't able to eat breakfast because oftentimes the breakfast line is closed. But now kids are showing up on time. They're eating breakfast. They're more alert in class. And guess what? At the end of the school day, they're ready to go home. You would have kids who would hang around at school and be there until late. At 4:05, the kids are ready to go home because they don't want to miss out on an opportunity to be at home in their respective neighborhoods to be with their families. And some of them have jobs. The other thing we saw in making a shift in that way, we were able to decrease transfer routes at those high schools. None of the kids who attend those high schools ride transfer. They ride a straight route. So some of them actually are getting home earlier with a later start time as a result of not having to go to transfer. So making those little tweaks were controversial initially, but the teachers are starting to appreciate having students who are more alert, who are calmer, who are participating more, who are more excited about being at school, who are on time in the morning. We just hope the trend continues. Because no matter how late they go to bed at night, some of the research tells us, adolescents probably are not going to even get into bed until about 11. So they're probably not even going to fall asleep till after midnight. Even at that late hour, if you don't have to be at school until almost 9, you still are able to get 8 hours of sleep, right? You can still be up. And if you don't have to ride a transfer bus, which is going to put you on a bus for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, your bus ride might be 10 or 15 minutes. That really just changes the entire experience for our students. And so we're seeing that. I'm hoping in 4.5 weeks and 9 weeks, we're going to see better grades. We're going to see better outcomes for our students. We're going to see less discipline issues because kids are appreciating being in school and are more focused on what's happening while they're there. And we're excited about that. And then we raised the start time for 4 of our elementary schools. Because again, the research tells us that elementary school children perform better earlier. So we moved the start time up for them only 30 minutes. We moved it up to 8 o'clock. And so we're seeing kids who are, again, the young kids who are extremely alert. We established foundational learning centers. So we have Melrose that we established in Marydale that are pre-K 4 to 2nd grade. So you have both of those schools are packed, but just pre-K4 to second grade. And we believe that putting 2 teachers in every class and setting up a foundational learning center where we can focus on those foundational learning skills, our students will be prepared for third grade. Having 2 teachers or 2 educators in the classroom in all of those classes, we feel like they're going to be better prepared for third grade, which we recognize now there's a law that says if you don't pass DIBELS in third grade, you can be retained. We focus that, we believe they'll be more prepared. So those were a lot of the changes we implemented in year 1 that was extremely controversial. I met with families, met with teachers, met with kids, had very candid conversations with them, but no one could refute the data, right? It wasn't about emotion. It wasn't what I think or what I feel. I simply said to them, here's the data. This is you. This is your school. This is how the students at our school are performing. This is what the data tells us about what we're doing with our students. Let's try something different. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result is insanity. So how do we do something different in order to get something different? So making those changes were controversial. I got to be honest. I'm not going to call any adult names, but telling some of our adults in the school system, we're not going to operate like that. We're not going to suspend kids for frivolous stuff. We're not going to expel kids for frivolous stuff. We're going to have very candid conversations with families. We're going to really seek to identify what is happening with our students. Why are they engaged in some of the undesirable behaviors we're seeing? And then why do we believe removing them from school is the best option? Now, here's the thing. There are almost 6,000 employees in our school system. I can't be everywhere at all times. I can't see everything every day. But when and where I can, we try to intervene, provide the necessary support, and help folks to think differently. I sent a whole ton of people from central office back into the school. That wasn't very popular. Folks said, I've matriculated through the school system and I'm outside of the school. And I said, well, that's what it worked at.
That's right.
So, we took child welfare and attendance. We took the curriculum department. We took all of our executive directors and we assigned them to a home-based school. We moved that office from a central office building to a school building. So this is where you start.
Every central office employee needs a school that is
Absolutely.
their school.
Yeah.
That is, my school is Marydale. I go there 3 times a week to check on it. I understand it may have an executive director, but if you're a central office employee and you don't have a pulse on schools, then you don't understand the fight in the same way. You're seeing the fight from here when you need to see it boots on the ground. So I absolutely love that.
So how was that? How was that shit?
It was a lot of crime. It was a lot of cussing behind the scene. I heard. Listen, the first thing I did when I got this job is got off social media, because for me, people are going to tell me the worst of what's being said, and you have to be very careful about what you allow to fill your brain, right? And so people ask me every day, "How you doing?" I said, "Better than some, worse than the rest." Try to stay somewhere in the middle, because ultimately, I knew for 25 years I had been observing what was happening in schools. I also knew that the organization I was working with prior to coming here, we had done some things just a little bit differently. And we were seeing tremendous progress and saw tremendous success with students. How to scale that for a district this size is a bit challenging, but I think we well on our way. Now, some people didn't like having to be in school. I got people right now who email me and want to sit down and talk and explain to me why they shouldn't be in school. Yeah. And I say to them, bring me your data. Yeah. Bring the data now. And then when you bring the data, be able to explain how not being in the school is going to change the data. Not one single person has been able to do that yet. Absolutely. Not one single person who doesn't want to be in the school has come to me and shown me data that suggests them not being in school is going to be more impactful than being in the school. The other thing, I showed them the data. I said, listen, as a result of teams being in school, we saw a decrease in discipline issues. We saw a decrease in the number of emails and phone calls we're receiving at central office because parents can see you at the school building and talk to you there. We saw a decrease in the number of teachers who were having challenges in terms of providing support for kids because we have teams on campus. We have curriculum folks on campus who can help teachers. We have child welfare and attendance folks on campus who can help. We have ESS people who are assigned to schools who can help. And as a result of having these teams on campus, folks who work at the school are now doing their jobs just a little bit differently. I think the other thing we had to start thinking about in our school system is customer service. how do we provide a better customer
We
service
get to talk,
experience?
me and Tramelle get to talk about customer service, because even though we don't work for the district anymore, people still remember,
Yeah.
and they do call about the customer service.
So how do you balance? I think the question going into the conversation about customer service is like, how do you balance that over the code? And I call him Brother Cole. I've been calling him Brother
Yeah,
Cole.
please
That's
do.
what that's
Please don't
what I'm
stop.
calling it.
Yeah, please don't stop.
How do you balance because what happens is, like, you just talked about a whole lot of things that are
Right.
positive and moving the
Yes.
district in many ways to look forward. But the narrative still becomes that one isolated incident that's not reflective of what we're trying to do as a district to move it forward. How do you balance or strike a balance between that and the narratives that people can put out there?
I think one is try as best as you can to control the narrative. I do a lot of social media stuff trying to control the narrative in terms of what we're trying to provide. One of the things we did this year, if you've all have visited our schools, we have these big billboards with how are we doing with the QR
Yes.
code.
Yes.
And I want feedback. I want families, I want people to scan that QR code and provide us with feedback about how we're doing. If you want to be specific to who you had an unfortunate encounter with, I want to know that as well. We've upped and we've ramped up our professional development around customer service, particularly with those who answer the phones, those who work in front offices. We've given people scripts in terms of what they're supposed to say when they answer the phone, how they're supposed to respond to certain situations. And we really talked about the effective domain in terms of the human interaction. Just because someone comes in upset, you don't have to match their energy.
That's right.
And really working with them on what that needs to look like, how you need to remain calm, how you need to respond. If in fact you feel yourself getting upset, go to the script.
Yeah.
So just making sure we have those responses for a bunch of different scenarios, and when and where we learn those scenarios are coming up, create new scripts to address those. Believe it or not, those things work. You know, I've had people who say, I turn to the script and I use the script and it worked. I think the other thing is when we receive negative responses from people, don't be quick to defend. Listen first. Understand what people's frustrations are. You know, disarm them by apologizing for them having had such an unfortunate experience and then figuring out how to make it better. Some of the stuff that I've dealt with in the school system early on is I was asking questions, you know, simple stuff. Why can't we get this person a check today? It's our fault. Why we can't get them a check today? Well, that's not how it works. I don't understand that. Why? Well, I don't listen. If you can't answer the question, go get me someone who can. And you know, I'm always polite, and they'll say, "Well, we just don't do it that way." Well, who's your boss? I know who your supervisor is. Thank you, I appreciate it. And try as best as we can to be customer service friendly. We've been doing things a certain way in this district for a long time, but here's the problem in the way we do things: it becomes the culture, right? And I think the bigger response to your question is how do we shift culture?
Yeah.
Because we have a culture of horrible customer service being okay. Like they'll be all right. I hear that a lot. They'll be okay. No, they might not be okay. Because I'm not okay with the way we're conducting ourselves. So how do we change that? You know, last year when I was here, I told you I put out the memo about dress code and people lost their mind. However, people are dressing better, people are looking better, and as a result, people are responding better. Our school system didn't just get like this overnight, so it's going to take some time. But we have made, and I think what we've been able to show people is change is possible if you just believe that you can do it. Now, here's the other side. You got to know coming into this role whether it's more political, right, or whether it's about the work. And we all know in Baton Rouge it's about the politics, and the politics are about relationships. And you got to have sustainable relationships with various different fractions in this town if you want to be able to move work forward. Everybody has an agenda, right? And I have to be one who says, okay, I understand where you're coming from. That might not be my agenda personally, but I understand where you're coming from. And then what's the politics around where those things are coming from? And then in all of this stuff, try to put students in the middle of it. So when I get these calls from the Democrats, the Republicans, the blacks, the whites, and they want to see stuff happening in the school system, I put kids in the middle of the conversation. And if the conversation or the agenda they're trying to move can support kids, then we can continue to talk. But if it's not about kids, and I just listen and say, well, listen, let's put something on the calendar and we'll circle back to this conversation and then try not to ever talk to them again. But if the conversation that or the agenda they want to move forward is about kids, oftentimes I can change their mind by saying, I don't see how that helps children. I just don't see how that has an impact on children. And listen, they're the big things, the huge things like transportation, HR, those are the biggest two departments where we have our biggest challenges. And they're the small little bitty things, small little bitty things like lesson plan, annotation of lesson plans, and those little bitty. However, if it's important to any one of our staff members and it makes it all the way up to my desk, then it has to be important to me. But sometimes I can't address every single solitary issue. So I spend a great deal of my time helping district leadership to understand everything that comes up is important. Everything.
And I think that's and just feel free to hop in whenever. But it's just driving so many of the questions that I have about just like in your role, being successful in a position like this. One of the things, you're only one person, right? And when you're shifting the mindset and the culture of an entire engine of a system like EBR, who's lived a certain way, and people are accustomed to that. How do you, what, like, 3 to 5, like, what is the 6-month things that you have to do to ensure that it's constantly shifting the culture? And people are like, because I mean, we could have this conversation and somebody's gonna be like, oh, this not happening in my school because X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So how do you continue to shift that culture? And then how do you respond when it's people who are just not being good actors in the culture shift?
Well, we redirected a few career paths.
I love it.
Listen, we've helped some people to understand this may not be the place. I think it's Nick Saban I heard say, you can be bad, you can be mediocre, you can be good, you can be excellent, or you could be elite, right? And most people are going to be good. And let me be clear, most people in our school system are good. They're good because they were created by God and God has given them what they need to be good. But a lot of people don't want to be excellent. And even smaller than that number want to be elite because it requires a certain level of discipline, commitment, and just stick to itness in order to be an elite individual. So as we do the real big things people didn't think could happen in a short period of time. Nobody believed school consolidation, or as I call it, realignment, could happen in a short period of time. No one believed we could decrease the teacher vacancy rate. Last year when I got here, we had 192 teacher vacancies. Now we have 62 today. That could change tomorrow, through attrition. People come and go. We changed that. This week, I'm asking the board to approve me pursuing a $40 million bond to change the high school experience. Why is it that none of our high schools have turf football fields? That's insane to me. We live in the capital region, and everybody around us, Zachary, Livingston Parish, West Baton Rouge have, and we don't have not one turf football field. When we look at our auditoriums at our high schools, we don't have robust performances because we don't have lighting, we don't have curtains, we don't have teams that are working and being able to do that. When we look at some of the career and technical ed courses, not at the C-Tech building that are offered at the schools, we don't have the adequate resources and equipment to be able to offer those courses so kids can have that experience right at their high school. So that's just coming from the kids. And so if approved on Thursday, we're going to get a comprehensive list and we're going to try to upgrade our football fields, upgrade our athletic facilities, upgrade some of what is happening in our performing arts classes, upgrade what is happening in some of our career and technical ed classes. 40 million is a lot of money when you start thinking about that. However, you got all these folks in the business community, right? The Laura Melançons at the Chamber of the World, the Chris Myers at, Baton Rouge Area Foundation, the Richard Lipsys of the world, the Mike Politos of the world. They might be upset for me calling their name, but they consistently ask me, what is it they can do to help? Well, I am trying to, and we are trying to enhance the overall K-12 experience, starting with early childhood, all the way to high school. Our kids should be proud when they step into McKinley High School, Liberty, Capital High School, Broadmoor, Bel Air. They ought to be proud when they walk in. Athletes ought to be proud when they walk in. Those performing arts students ought to be proud just at what they have access to. And so that's a huge shift. Me doing that is a little bit, off kilter in terms of regular business, just being innovative and thinking about those things.
People realize that it makes an impact on school culture.
That's right.
So it is a big deal when kids can say, this is my school, when they want to spend time there, when the window, they're looking at Zachary's Field. When they go there, they're saying, oh, this is nice. And we don't have anywhere in our district to have anything like that. They're looking at other schools when they're performing. I remember a few years ago, I went to Forest Heights performance for The Lion King. It was the best production I had ever saw children do. Like, and they had to go to Glen Oaks because they don't have what they need at their school. So they were performing at Glen Oaks. And I'm like, it's wonderful that they can go down the street, but at the same time, how amazing would it be for these children who are working all year on this, because they're a performing arts school, working on this production that's huge and it's beautiful, and that's, getting them in the door in the theater world. Why can't they do that at their school?
Every year, and we got to start thinking about how do we put the resources in place to give those kids and those enhanced experience right where they are.
Right where they
And
are.
those are the things we're working towards. Being able to save money closing buildings, being able to
Yes.
think outside the box and lease some of our facilities to other entities to make a few dollars to provide. Listen, $5,000 may not be a lot for some, but $5,000 to the radio and TV broadcast studio at a school is a lot of money for that school.
Yeah.
In order to buy mics, in order to buy radio equipment, batteries, and things of that nature. So we're looking at various different ways to refocus money. I think the biggest thing that I want to accomplish, I had a guy tell me yesterday, man, if you put one turf field at one high school in Baton Rouge, your legacy would be cemented. I laugh because for that individual, that's important. But one of the things I want to do is get our teachers a significant raise before we leave. That's going to require an overhaul of our salary schedule. I don't know if y'all, Tramelle, I know you know. Our salary schedule is jacked up. It's really jacked up. And we've partnered, we've contracted with a group that's done it all over the country, and I'm getting good feedback. We got all these different ranges for all these different titles and all these different positions, and people who were making more money as 11-month employees and making less money as 12-month employees because the salary scale is jacked up. So he's going to bring a recommendation to us. And the first thing that's going to happen as a result of the recommendation, inherently, everybody's going to get a raise without us having to do anything. Everybody will get one just because we adjust the salary schedule. That's number one. But number two, how do we take what we have, use it a little bit differently so that we can invest in our employees and keep them around? So I'm hoping that when they bring that recommendation to us in in October, we'll be able to make that adjustment this year, and then going into the 26-27 school year, give everybody a raise, and then continue to be able to do that over the next 2 years. But that's a lot. You know what I mean? Because
HR is a lot.
We got a brand new lady, great young lady, Dr. Lisa Smothers. I don't know if you know Lisa Smothers.
I think I met her.
Yeah, she's done a phenomenal job of overhaul. We getting ready to, I'm making an announcement here. We get ready to move HR from in the main building to the IRC next door, so that it has its own entity.
Yes.
So that when folks come, we can, have a lounge area for our employees to be in, to be comfortable, to having a winning experience, to feel as if though they're being treated as professional. Sometimes in the main office with the security, and you go down there to HR and it's business as usual. We want our employees to feel like it's a place to be. We can provide professional development in that building, and it's its own entity. I think in most companies, HR is its own separate entity. Sometimes it's not. It may not be the place where you go for great things to happen, but it can be a place.
Like former HR manager.
Yeah.
And my mom's an HR director. Yes, it is not the place where anybody wants to be most of the time, but I do love that you said that, because a part of the thing has been the privacy that's required for HR. It does not need to be in the same building. So I love that you're being innovative to say, let's move this somewhere else, because it can be, it's always been this person went to HR, and you may and it's still, you're going to, what's that, recruiter's office on the side or something, but it's, a phone call made. Oh, I saw this person over there. So I like that they'll get the human thing.
It's the little tweaks that you make to make our organization more customer service driven, both internal and external. And again, those things take some time, but we're making those tough decisions. And listen, I know people beat me up every day. It's it's part of it though. I signed up for it, but when I have conversations with people and they really seek to understand my thinking, everyone walks away and say, I get that.
Yeah.
I understand that. And then there's the other side. People think they know why I've made certain decisions. They really don't know. You look at Capitol High, let's use that as an example, who just had their huge,
I was gonna ask you about this.
they had their huge
Go ahead and get into it, because then
reunion yesterday. No, I went to Tara. They busted me to Tara. I wanted to go to Capitol.
Okay.
But Judge Brady had us go to Tara High School from Fairfield. But they had the reunion picnic yesterday at the old Capitol on 23rd Street. We've moved it to the facility on Greenwood Springs Road.
Yes.
And folks were upset about that.
Yes.
Yeah, folks were upset about
I'm
that.
like, yeah, they said that you did that.
Yeah. And part of what I had to explain to people was, listen, Capitol High School on 23rd, the last school year served less than 200 kids. You know what I mean? In a facility that isn't in the best condition.
Yeah.
And trying to convince a board to make the type of financial investment in a facility that only serves less than 200 kids.
Impossible.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for them. It's
But
like
so many ties. I feel like that's a part of the struggle of your job, of the board's job, is that so many people get attached to my high school, my school, and it's like you have to make the decisions that are in the best interest of students. I remember one of the schools that I had when I was a district employee, the school had 99 kids. And I remember calling you about it, and I'm like, this school has 90 something kids. Like they could easily go to Northeast. Now they do. But it was like they can go to Northeast. And I remember I had a coach there and a coach at Northeast, and we were still needing instructional coaches. And I said, this coach needs to serve both schools because it's 90 kids here. Like they can, but it was still, even with that leader, that principal at the time, it was hard because they were like, well, I want my own coach.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, but this is not, you're serving 90 kids. So it makes it hard for you. And then you're already, like you said, from this community. So some of those decisions, I think that we have to give grace in the same way I was asking for grace for Titi and her, decisions that she's made or whatever. We have to give grace in our leaders. We can't expect everything to go our way. And I often say, don't let your experience trump my expertise. Mm-hmm. And we have to trust the expertise of the people that are in the seat to say, yes, this may be my school and I had a great experience, but it's not the same school that was there 20 years ago.
I'll get back to the Capitol thing because I think there's so much left to be said about that. And I would just love for you to, your message to people who may be missing the piece. Like you talked about people who understand, who have a conversation with you, who miss certain aspects of why decisions are made. What is your message to the Capitol community who just are so invested into the building and not actually the outcomes of what's happening with the school and what you've done? I mean, because I think there's so much of this conversation. Because even when the conversation came up at first, people were like, just because I went to Southern Lab, like I didn't care. And they don't know the meetings that we had behind the scenes just to get to where we are today. So people can still say that there is a Capitol. That's right. And the fights that we had to fight with the board who didn't want another Struma. Right. And those investors that it takes to keep a Struma open. So what would be your message to those folks as you think about those level of difficult decisions?
My message would be, when I moved to Baton Rouge as a 7-year-old in 1980, I had 3 cousins who attended Capitol High School. And I attended all of the basketball games, all of the football games. I went to the summer feeding program at Capitol High School. So Capitol High School is a part of my history. Every single graduate of Capitol High School who had a tremendous high school experience should want the same for the children who attend there now. And that's not what they were getting last school year. They weren't getting the robust, exciting academic education experience that those students who attended Capitol in the 70s, 80s, and 90s received when Charles Keel was the principal there. They weren't receiving that. And you ought to want that for them. Yes. Now, if you want that for them, that doesn't necessarily mean you want that for them at the same location. Because guess what? Capitol High hadn't always been in that location. Yes. You got to know the history. Capitol High once was on Capitol Avenue, which is now Gus Young. And so for me growing up here, I understand that. And I understand times change and as circumstances change, And as a result of times and circumstances changing, we got to make those adjustments for the kids we serve now.
That's right.
That school went from having less than 200 kids last year to having over 500 now, simply because we made some adjustments in a brand new facility, well, a newer facility, a 20-year-old facility versus a 60-year-old facility.
Mhm.
And we're making other adjustments in terms of the athletic facilities that we're going to implement there starting in January. And so those kids have a better opportunity now in that building. And I gotta mention this because no one wants to talk about this. The numbers of school-aged children being born in those areas has consistently declined over the last 20 years. There has been a huge shift in population
That's right.
in our community. So when you look at neighborhoods like Belfair, Fairfield, uh, Edgewood Estates, better known as Easy Town. When you look at that's the original name of that area, Edgewood Estates.
I have no idea.
But Easy Town now. When you look at those Northdale, when you look at those communities, you got one or two things. You see a lot of elderly folks who live there who've owned those houses for 50, 60 years, and their children are grown and have moved. But what you don't see is young families with young kids moving into those neighborhoods. So the numbers of children who live in those neighborhoods now aren't the same as they were in the 70s and 80s, right? And so we got to start thinking about where is the population shifting, where are the children going, or where have they gone, and then how do we provide resources and how do we provide an academic institution in those areas that children can be proud of. So I would say to the folks from Capitol High, I believe there should always be a Capitol High School in our community, but it may look different if we want those children to have the Capitol High School Lion experience. It may look different.
Yeah.
And if you support that experience, then you have to recognize that the children we're serving today are very different.
Yeah.
We're in the social media, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook era where kids access to the world looks a lot different.
Mhm.
And we got to provide an experience to them. And it may look different than the facility. Now, when I went by the picnic yesterday, there was thousands of people over there.
Continue to be valid.
Yeah, and we spent a great deal of time last week cleaning that building for that experience. We wanted to make sure that when they came back there, they could have a very comprehensive, robust, exciting experience at the old building. And we moved a number of different of our school operations to that building so that could continue to be activity going on there. And then, we want them to develop their alumni so that they could use that facility there. So these are all the things that we're trying to work with folks who went to Capitol to establish. And then working with the city of Baton Rouge and looking at how can we work with Brett. How can we work together, partner together to redevelop that whole entire area? Because we have a brand new, robust Park Medical Academy, which is right there. And then how do we reimagine what the area may look like, whether that be shopping, whether that be housing, whether that be healthcare access. What does that look like in that area? So it's a lot happening in the area. There are a lot of conversations happening. But for me, we can't wait.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up because that was some of the conversations when I was on the board. Two things, that the facilities athletically, how we want to change, but also the capital area. But you had the great experience of also being able to be a city council member and understand community investment in a way that's not just specific to education.
Yes.
So when you think about a project like that, people instantly talk about gentrification of an area.
Mhm.
How do we, as a community, balance the legacy and history of communities while also providing with resources to make people want to be in areas? So how do we balance gentrification with communities that are already established?
We have to make sure the only way to clean up a community is not gentrification. We have to be very clear that oftentimes what we see in our communities where people want to gentrify is because people have left behind the blight, the trash, the dilapidated buildings. And then people think, well, the only way to fix that is to gentrify. That's not the only way to do it. We have to start saying to folks who live there, listen, we got to take control of what is happening in our community. We have to protect, we have to embrace, we have to support the small businesses in our community, those who have chose to stay. And then we have to work together to start thinking about how do we ourselves rehab. I was talking to a friend since I've been here. he lives on Edgewood in Easytown, and he's bought up 6 other lots on Edgewood. He's gonna rehab them himself because he's invested in the area because he grew up there. We got to start reinvesting our own dollars in the areas where we live and stop waiting for someone else to come and do that for us, right? And then we have to start thinking about and dictate to those we elect in office what we want to see. We can't let them tell us what we want in our, what they want to put in our community. No, this is what we want here. So you talk about all the green space at the Capitol High campus, around Capitol High and the whole Park Elementary, all of that green space, and working with us and working with Donaldson Chapel and St. Mary's Church and working with the folks who live in that community, and then really thinking about what do we want to see here. And then go to the mayor's office and go to the council person and say, here's what we want to see. Here's how it should be developed. Here are the people we want to see engaged in the process. And then really start putting pen to paper, making a plan, and then really implementing that plan without having to wait for someone to come and do it. Now, that doesn't mean we can't work with Brett, who's getting ready to do Memorial Park, which is right across Scenic Highway. That doesn't mean we can't work with, Housing Authority, who is thinking about putting a grocery store right at the corner of 23rd and Fuquay. That doesn't mean we can't work with them and start thinking about what's the best way to do that is best going to serve the area of town that it is in. It just means we have to be willing to get out, remove ego, get out of each other's way, and think about what's best for the people who serve there. Listen, the Wilson Foundation has done an exceptional job. When I was on the city council, we rehabbed a number of different houses on 27th Street, right? And not only did we rehab those houses on 27, we rehabbed them for the folks who lived in the community and made sure they were able to take advantage of the program and be residents in the houses in the area where they grew up, where they live. That was huge for us across the street from a brand new school. So partnerships, relationships, community development, looking at how we work together versus waiting for someone to dictate to us what is supposed to happen. And I think on the citizen side, we got to understand the city council and the mayor's office exist to provide basic services to the community. It is the community's responsibility to say to the city council, this is what we want. And this is how we want to see it happen. And then work with those professionals we know who grew up in our communities to say, hey, why don't you help by investing your time? Doesn't have to be a lot of money. It could be your time, and then working with a city government to secure funding to be able to do that in a very robust, transparent way. Because of course, we all recognize that things can happen in isolation or behind closed doors without the input of the community, sometimes lead to things not happening. Yeah. So we have to make sure that the community is at the table for those conversations. And so I think there's a lot of good things happening, a lot of promise. We just have to be committed to seeing it through, right?
Yeah. So how do you, I think, and just again, feel free to chime in. There's so many follow-up questions. I can talk about it all day. But when you think about like that community input and that advocacy from your end, switching over to like as a superintendent, like what do you believe you've done well to gain? You had a lot of trust coming in, but what do you think you've done well to like get that input and speak and hear from community? And what do you think you would like to see grow or in that area?
Listen, I've attended I've attended so many community conversations, big ones, small ones, in people's living rooms, in stores, in back rooms and warehouses, just listening to people and trying to understand what it is they want. I think that has been the greatest part of the success is just still listening, still going to the community, still going to the events, still being willing to have the conversations with people in the community and hear from them. Oftentimes folks who sit in these seats put buffers and layers between them.
Yes.
And for me, I try hard not to do that. I try to go, listen, I still go to Chicken Shack on Acadian at least twice a week and just sit in there, right? In the afternoons, just sit in there and listen to the people, right? Huh?
You ain't no chicken.
Oh, all the time.
You said sit in there like you ain't no chicken.
Why them eating? Why them eating? Shack ball and eating my chicken sandwich and lemon pie and talking to Troy and listen to the people. You know what I'm saying? And hear what they have to say about. Still go to the Gushing and Christmas Parade and listen to people and hear what they have to say. Still go to the community conversations that are taking place and hear what people have to say. And what's interesting is they all want the same thing. They want their kids in a safe environment,
That's right.
getting a good education from people who care about them. And it's really that simple. safe environment, education from people who care about them. It's really that simple. I don't, some people get into, well, we ought to have barbering, we ought to have home economics, we ought to have auto, we ought to have welding. I agree with all of that. But it has to be what kids want, not what you think they should have.
That's
We
right.
have to go to kids and say, what do you guys want to do? Kids today may not recognize how lucrative being a welder is,
Right.
because a kid may want to code, want to work in a recording studio, may want to work in the IT department because they see that there are so many people like, what's the guy's name, Castanat, I think, who is a streamer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where's the curriculum for that?
It was this.
You know what I mean? Where's the curriculum for that? So, right, where's the curriculum for that? This is what our children want. And how are we developing opportunities for our students based on what they want?
Yeah.
You said it earlier, elevating student voice. I don't even know if people really knows what that look like. I went to 7 last year, high school conversations with students, and I went to another 6 with middle school students. Just listening, asking the question, just listening. It's very interesting what the kids have to say about their own experiences. They want to be safe. They want teachers to treat them with a certain level of respect. And guess what? Kids want to be respectful. They want to be respectful to the adults. They just want to know that the adults see them as real people who have needs, who have feelings, and who need to be supported. But it was very interesting to me in all the schools we went to, from Woodlawn to Struma to Baton Rouge High to Bel Air, all of the kids talk about wanting to be safe in their schools. So we made some tremendous investments in some of the safety technology that we have in our schools that we didn't have when I became superintendent. And that kids today are telling me, I've already been to 40 schools since the first day. I went to over 22 on the very first day of school. And every school, I talk to kids and want to know what's going on, how's the school year going, tell me how we could do better. And kids to be honest, you know what I mean? How can we do better? So we had a great first full week of school. It wasn't perfect. We still have some transportation challenges that we got to work through.
I hear that he said it. There's some things we can work through. So
Be grease.
But, and let's talk about transportation.
yeah, please, just a second.
Yeah,
Just a second.
Just go ahead.
Here's a mistake we made. For years, we have allowed our bus drivers to provide individual household accommodations for families. I'm gonna pick your child up in front of your house. You live next door, so I'm gonna pick your child up in front of your house. I'm gonna stop at 8 or 9 houses on the street. Now that's not the route.
Shout out to Mr. Davis.
That's not the route. All right, that is not the route. But it does lend itself to you feeling more comfortable about your child being picked up. However, it does lead to a bus driver being 20 to 15 minutes late every day getting to school, and then being even later getting home because with traffic and you're making those individual accommodations. I appreciate that and wish we could do it for every family, but it's not efficient to be able to do that. That's number one. Number two, sometimes, we made some policy changes this year with transportation, because what we said was, let's really look at the kids that we are providing transportation for that we don't have to. And then let's look at the distance from where kids are having to go to the bus stop in the areas where they live. We made some changes there, and people weren't necessarily excited about those changes. And I get it. But what I said to the transportation department, in the areas of town that we know and recognize aren't the safest, and we can work with BRP and our sheriff's department to determine which ones are, let's make sure we're providing the right type of support system. If that's a second person on the bus, right? Not a bus driver, but a second paraprofessional on the bus who can step outside and assist with making sure kids are able to be safe as they're walking from their house to the bus stop. You know what I mean? Those types of little tweaks. We added pickup and drop off points. That's not the ideal thing to do for families. I get it. You want your child picked up in front of the house, but we have a shortage of bus drivers because Amazon opened up last year in September and is now paying people $22 an hour. And our bus drivers in the school system on a full-time route only make $13.95. So we got to make some adjustments there. So we're down 30 bus drivers this year. We have consolidated some routes, which has made it better. But then there's the other side. We need folks to make sure they update their information. send us the appropriate addresses. How can we know if you move and you've not informed the school or you've not informed the school system that you move? I had a parent call me the other day and she said, "Hey, can you help me with my child's uh, transportation?" I said, "Sure." So I looked it up and I sent it to her. She said, "Nope, this not gonna work. My child didn't ride that bus. My child rides the bus 2 streets over." And I said, how did you put that together? Like, who did that? But the school told me I could. I said, well, that's really not how it works. Your child is here. She said, well, no, two streets over, the bus picks him up at his friend's house. And I said, well, does his friend still go to school? She said, no, his friend graduated. I said, so you're still gonna walk 2 streets over to the friend's house? Well, yeah, if the bus gonna pick up there. I said, well, the bus may not pick up there because that child no longer lives there. So there may not be a reason for the bus to pick up there. You see what I'm saying? So it's all these little one-off situations that contribute to some of the transportation issues.
Yeah.
Where we made the biggest mistake, and I want to own it here, we did not send out individual letters to families whose transportation stops were going to change. We
Yeah.
sent out bus cards to those families.
Yeah.
And if you're anything like me, when you get that bus card, you don't read it. You just leave it in the same spot, same location. We should have sent out a letter that says, hey, Ms. Thompson, your bus route, your bus stop in previous years was here. This year is going to be here as a result of the changes we made. We didn't do those things. And so we're going back. I told Mr. Howe to go back. We're going to send out a letter, apologize profusely about what we didn't do, and just say, these are the adjustments we made. We opened up the phone lines for the past 2 weekends on Saturday, just so we could be there all day. So if families wanted to call and talk about their transportation challenges, they could. Now, I talked to 3 previous superintendents, and I've talked to 4 who work in other school districts around the country. And they all have said to me the exact same thing. Join the party. Transportation is a challenge everywhere because a new school year brings about new transportation services. You got new kids coming in, you got old kids going out. You got people who move and transition. So we're working through some of those. But the thing I'm most proud of is that we have implemented Let's Talk. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's the AI generated customer service response team. And so if a parent calls and the phone or transportation doesn't answer, an AI generated response will answer. You can say on the phone what your concerns are. It will transcribe whatever you say on the phone. We'll get it, and then a transportation person can get it and provide a response back to you. A lot of families have reported they appreciate having gotten a response that way because you can get it through email, you can get it through text, and you can get it through an automated phone call back to your phone. So we've upgraded our technology in terms of the customer service. But again, we're moving a lot faster than some of our families can appreciate because they want to talk to a live voice. And we're saying, well, when you don't, just hold for a second, leave a message, it will be transcribed. And if you leave a message from a cell phone, that information will come right back to you. So the other day, on the very first day of school, we had 1,245 calls from in the AI Let's Talk system. 967 of them were able to be addressed right away. You know what I mean? So it's the tweaks, the upgrades. And as I said to the team at the beginning of the year, we're going to shift and we're going to bring EBR to the 21st century.
Yes,
and kicking and screaming. So on both sides, right? That's the constituents of our families we serve, as well as the folks who work in the school system. Because there's a fear. If we upgrade too fast and utilize the technology, folks will not have a job. And I understand that, but we cannot continuously do the same thing we've been doing and expect different outcomes. We just cannot. So a lot of good things happening, a lot of challenges, bumps in the road, but that's what happens when you're trying to shift an entire organization, right?
It needed the shift, like it needed it. And Tramelle and I, we looked at each other when you said about the AI bot. Me and Tramelle said 3 years ago. Three years ago, like we needed that. That should have been a thing. And it should have, because people want responses. They just want to know that you're listening.
Yeah.
Half the time we get calls because people want someone to talk to. Even if we don't tell them what they want to hear, one of the things is Tramelle addressed the other day, stop bringing us half information. But they want to know that somebody is listening to their concern, because while it may not be a mountain to some folks, it is a mountain to them.
Yeah.
And one of the things of the, first rule of customer service is that, you internalize whatever they have going on. You make sure that you make that a priority. So I love that you have implemented that. I didn't know that EVR had finally.
Oh, let's talk.
But
let's talk.
that's great. That's
Yeah,
good to
that's
hear.
good.
Yeah.
Tramelle, I do want to say this. I appreciate you for your honesty on social media. You don't go with the status quo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You make it plain. All of y'all, complaining about this, but here's the reality of the situation. A lot of people don't have the courage to do that. So thank you for that. Sometimes I'm at home and somebody will say to me, Tramelle going off on social media. Yeah, but you need to go see it. So I'll call my cousin and say, give me your login. So I can see it.
Listen, I use my platform for,
Yes.
but I know how it feels as a school, when I was a school board member, and just a leader in general. First of all, a lot of assumptions are made from misinformation.
Yes.
And people need the right information. And they also need an honest voice to be like, yeah, you're just not right when you say this because of this.
That's right.
But we could talk to you all day, Brother Cole. The last question that we have for you, and then we'll allow you to give any closing thoughts. If you could give yourself a grade at this superintendency time, what would it be and why?
Oh, see, I'm gonna tell you, taking in different categories, but overall would be a C plus. I'm gonna tell you why. Until all of our kids are able to perform on grade level, we still got work to do. And I cannot take or give myself a great performance when that hasn't happened, until all of our employees feel like they are receiving high quality service from the organization they work for, and they feel valued, they feel seen, they feel appreciated. We still have work to do until we can get our teachers paid at a rate that I believe is above the regional average, where people are proud. Then we still have work to do. But I'll say this: we've gotten so much better in terms of the things we were able to accomplish in year one. I had a superintendent from Memphis called me and said, for whatever reason, he's been following what's been going on in Baton Rouge. And he said, man, you guys have done more in 1 year than most superintendents will do in their entire tenure as a superintendent, because you weren't afraid to make bold steps, to make bold changes. And I believe the changes we were able to make. Listen, we closed 9 schools, and the closure of those 9 schools impacted 27 schools. We did all that in 100 days. We made those shifts, we made those moves in 100 days. So a huge celebration to the team for being able to facilitate that. There are people like Casey Gilbert, Terica Williams, and Amy Jones, who took that on as a task, and they made it happen. And there's a whole host of other people, Katasha Edwards and Andrea Okonski worked on this realignment piece. Katasha came in last year. She was the first person I hired. She came in and she has taken the curriculum piece and overhauled the things that we're doing, making sure that kids have access to high quality instructional materials. We had a special master when I got here because we weren't doing the best in our special ed services. We've totally revamped special ed under the direction of Dr. Harris and Dr. Coates. So a lot of good things are happening. I'm so proud. We only have 62. This is what we had last time I checked. Teacher vacancies, when we had so many last year. Our relationship with the State Department of Education is so much better than it was when I came in. And all these things are a testament to our ability to say, hey, we're open for business. We want the help because we need the help. And as we receive help, how do we make it a better system for kids? And so I'm pleased with the numbers of teachers who have gone through the science of reading training. When I got here, that number was dismal, but now, that number is a much better space. I'm pleased with the number of students who, after the retention rates, were able to show growth on third grade devils. So we've made some gains, and I'm proud of the gains, but the accountability system is changing this year. I don't know if people know that. Y'all should do a whole show about the history of the accountability system and how the target moves every time we get a handle on.
Yes, sir.
Since 1999, that target has consistently moved every 6 to 7 years. And so as soon as you get a handle on it, you get an understanding of it, the target moves again. This year, 25-26 school year, the accountability target is going to move again. And the last thing I'll say is to the teachers, I hear you. Listen, when I was a teacher, when I came into the school system in 1998, we had to handwrite our lesson plans. And when we wrote lesson plans, we had to identify on our lesson plans how we were going to accommodate for 504 sped students. It's evolved over the years. Nowadays, we have HQIM, high quality instructional materials that provide the lesson plans for you. However, if you are a teacher and you don't take that lesson plan and internalize what you're supposed to be teaching, you're going to have some challenges when you have kids in your class at various different stages of their academic progress. So you got kids who are going to be high flyers, right? They're going to get it as soon as you say it. And then you got kids who are going to need a little bit more time. And if you're trying to teach from that lesson plan from the script and you don't know where to make those adjustments, you're going to have some challenges. So I do hear you. Katasha and I met today and we talked a long time about some of the changes they're getting ready to make in terms of providing support for teachers, but we're listening to teachers. We have the teacher group, the teacher advisory committee that I meet with once a month, who are providing support and providing feedback for us. We have the principals advisory committee as well as the parent advisory committee that we meet with regularly. So we're listening to, we're hearing, and some of the changes we're making is a direct result. That's the other thing I want people to know. I just didn't walk in the door and say I'm gonna do this stuff. I listened to a whole lot of people and I start hearing what people were saying, concerns, problems, looking at the data, and start working with teams of folks to say, okay, let's implement these things, let's put these things in place. And I feel good about where we are. This is going to be a crucial year. We got accountability system changing. This is the year after realignment, and then we have to look to see if we need to do another phase. Those schools that have been impacted have seen tremendous growth, but here's my biggest concern. This is what this community said we needed on one side, right? Business community said we had buildings that were being underutilized. This is also what some folks said in the Black community. You know, I don't like my kids going to that rundown, torn down school. Why they got to go there? All right, let's make some adjustments there. But now we have facilities that are empty, and I don't know if this community was ready for that as fast as we move. I think people thought this wouldn't happen until 28, and it happened right away. Yeah. And now I need folks in the business community. I need our own internal folks to be ready to move. I don't know if people saw me going out for a bond to enhance the high school experience as quickly as we did. But I'm like, our kids can't wait. If it can be done eventually, we must do it immediately. Our kids, before I leave as superintendent, before they get rid of me as superintendent, I want to see our high school teams play on a turf field at their home field. I want to see them be able to do that. I want to see their faces when they walk out into their own football field at Broadmoor, at Bel Air, and it's a turf field with an all-weather track. I want them to be able to feel good about that experience. And so these are some of the things that we are implementing right now. We're pushing forward right now, and I feel good about that. So a lot to do, a lot more to come. But, you know, I say this all the time in all my speeches. We got a lot of work to do, but the only way we learn to do the work is by actually doing the work. So we going to keep working.
You said so many good things there, and we love Tasha Edwards. So let me tell you, I'm a curriculum and instruction person, and I love what you said about the lesson plans and the things, because you're right, you have to annotate them, but I think that even with bringing in people, you've put in so many good people that'll get the work done. And Katasha is someone we talked about last time on the show. My son followed her from Audubon to WAM, and we love her because she knows how to get things done. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen there. But if you had to sum up what you want your legacy to be, because everyone has to think about their legacy in this role as superintendent of EBR schools from 2024 to however long, what do you want the Cole legacy to be?
Couple of things. Number one, I want kids to know who the superintendent was. That's real simple. But I don't think enough children in the school system ever know who the top person is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And for
we
me,
asked them.
that means that the superintendent hasn't done a good enough job of being in schools meeting with kids. I know kids know who I am. Not everybody, but I know a ton of the students know who I am, because if they know who I am, that means that I've had an opportunity to be with them and hear from them and talk to them and make decisions that I believe are going to be in the best interest of serving them. Because again, kids are only going to be in your school system for a short period of time. So I want them to know that. The other thing, I want school leaders to feel supported. I want them to feel that while I was superintendent, they had support to do their job to the best of their ability. And I tell school leaders all the time, higher performance, less leadership, lower performance, more in more engagement. The better you do, you'll have more time, autonomy to do the job the way you want to do it. If there's a decrease in your performance, I'm gonna be involved. Not only am I gonna be involved, you're gonna have to report directly to me because I want to know what's going on, but not from a punitive perspective, from a support perspective. So that's number two. Number three, I want to enhance the overall K-12 experience for all of our students so they feel proud knowing that they had a superintendent who heard from them and then who made changes to give them a better experience. You know, I know people think I'm crazy on the athletic piece, but I just know if we invest in athletics, we're gonna attract so many more kids to return to the school system because everybody wants to be part of a winning atmosphere. And when you invest in athletics and athletes feel good about their schools and they take on leadership roles and they do better academically, people will follow the athletes on campus and it will enhance the overall experience. The other thing is teacher pay. We will, some type of way, figure out how to pay our teachers more, pay our bus operators more, pay our cafeteria workers more, our, paraprofessionals more. We will figure out a way to financially support our staff so that they feel appreciated. And I think if we can do all those things, the school system will have transformed, and that will be my legacy. That I came in during a very challenging time. We settled things down. We had a relatively quiet school year last year. We had a few bumps in a row, but once we got rolling in January, things kind of settled down. We had a quiet school year, and I want there's an excitement in the air around public education in Baton Rouge that hadn't been for a while. And I think it's because we try to tell our own story. We want to create this environment. My tagline is "Dare to be great," right? And people mess with me about that all the time. But it's like, why can't CBR be the best school system in the state? Why can't it be? And what's stopping us from being the best school system in the state? And what do we need to do to ensure that we're doing the right types of things to make it the best in the state? And then if it's the best in the state, the next step is for it to be the best in the country. And I believe we can do that if we do the right types of things. It won't be easy. Folks got to be willing to, roll their sleeves up and go to work. Folks got to be willing to recognize that everything's not going to happen exactly the way they want it to. But I tell staff all the time, some decisions will be yours, some will be mine, some is going to be ours. And I'm going to be very clear on which is which. And in the end, I don't care who gets credit. Because as superintendent, I'm going to get all the credit. So I don't care who gets credit. You can go out and say, I did that. I implemented that. You sure did. I'm proud of you. Thank you so much. Because I think it's all of our responsibility to try and help our kids, to try and help our teachers, to try to help this community through education. To me, it is the pathway to freedom. A good education is a pathway to freedom. And people ask me when I say that, what does freedom mean? Whatever you want it to be. When you leave school, you're free to choose to go into whatever field you want to go in, knowing that you were prepared to do that. And that's what I want my legacy to be, to answer your question, Ms. Thompson, that we prepare kids to have the confidence to do whatever they wanted to do, whatever that looks like. If they want to just graduate and go and chill at home, hopefully you won't do that. But you feel confident enough that you can because you were prepared in a way. If you want to go work on Capitol Hill, you want to go to college, you want to go to the military, you want to go in the workforce, you feel confident to do that. You can walk in a room with dignitaries and hold your own because you were educated in a way that you can read, write, and communicate, or you can go on a field and participate because you were educated the right way and you were prepared. I believe our students deserve the very best, and I believe we can give them the very best if we just work hard at doing that. If the goal is, if the North Star is that I'm a child, I went through EBR from pre-K 3 all the way to graduate, and now I'm graduating. What do I want to do? I can do any number of things. If I want to leave and travel abroad and go to Cape Town and go to school there, I feel like I've been prepared because I went to school in East Barron's Parish school system. And I think that would be really, really, really cool to me if I met kids after they graduate. They feel like, oh, I was prepared. I got a good education. Or if I met kids and they said, I went to high school XYZ. It was the best high school in the world. And the next kid said, well, I went to this high school. I feel like my high school is the best in the world. It's because we put the right systems in place and people have pride and they feel good. And if we work with Southern University so that we have a pipeline of students who automatically, when they graduate, I'm going to Southern. That's what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? LSU and BRCC as well. But I do remember when I was coming out of high school in 1991, I wanted to go to Southern.
Yeah.
It wasn't nothing else. I'm going to Southern University. And I think we somehow lost that connectivity to Southern. I met with Dr. Shields Thursday. We had a long conversation about how can Southern be more involved at our high schools. I had a conversation with Dr. Tate before he left about how could LSU be more involved at our high schools. I think, Tramelle, when you were on the board, you established the associate degree program. And so we saw those kids from Glen Oaks High School. 16 of them graduated last year with their associate degree. And I can't take no credit for that. That's the previous administration and Dr. Cito Narcisse, who did a phenomenal job of establishing that program. And we're continuing that. That's the other thing we have to do. Cannot be afraid to recognize what the previous administration did well, acknowledge them for their work, acknowledge them for the successes they had, and then continuing the work. I've talked to Dr. Narcisse since I've been superintendent and asked him very candidly, how did you do this? What was your thinking about this? Because, if we care about children, we got to be willing to have those conversations. So he implemented some really good things around third grade reading and literacy. And there are going to be people who are watching this who say, why you giving Cito all this credit? Because he deserves it. He did some good things while he was here. And I'm continuing to build on the good things he did. And we cannot be afraid to do that. And hopefully when I leave here, the next guy will say, Cole did some good things and we want to build on that. Because they had a positive impact on our students. So, being open-minded, being willing to work with people, and always, the one thing I would want people to say, he cared about kids.
Yeah.
He cared about kids. He tried to help kids be better. And that's really, if they say that, I'll be satisfied. All this other big stuff, but if a kid can say I met him and he was cool, he cared about me, I'll be fine with that.
And with that being said,
I know I talked a lot.
No, it's fine.
No,
that was beautiful. I think it was some great things, some candid things that people need to hear.
Yes.
We could have this conversation forever and ever. We will always invite you here. You always have a platform to share here, Brother Cole. We look forward to our next time talking with Brother Cole in our next episode.
So I can call y'all and say, hey, I want to come talk about it.
Yes.
Just call us and let us know.
We're here on the couch.
Well, with that being said, we are off the couch. Happy game week to you, all of you Southern University Jaguars. Right, I have to get that out there. Yeah, look forward to our next episode, and that has been another edition of The Other Voice with Dr. T, Dr. J, and Tramelle.
Dr. J.
Dr. J.
That works.
Peace.
Peace.
I'm sorry, man. I know I talk a lot.
You're fine.